My name is David Postolsky, and you are at the March 2025 edition of the Entrepreneurial Strategy Series, what we call ESS, where we put on topics relating to concept to exit for the benefit of entrepreneurs, startups, and emerging companies everywhere around the world. We've been doing it for the last 4 years, and we plan to do it every month, last Thursday of the month, for the foreseeable future. As an intellectual property and patent attorney at Gearhart Law, a lot of my clients, regardless of where they are, where they start their journeys, whether it's in the United States or they're based somewhere else, there are always questions and a demand for filing their intellectual property, their patent, their trademark, their copyright into another country, in particular, the Asian countries. And so I decided to gather some of our trusted partners that we work with at the firm. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, but we encourage questions. So please put your questions in the chat, and if we see them live, we'll get to it. If not, we will take them. We will take them at the end. We will cover a lot of different topics today, not just intellectual property, but also doing business in each of those countries and kind of what are the benefits of doing business in those countries. So without further ado, thank you for joining. I'm going to start with Siddhant. He's in India. And please take a moment to introduce yourself. I will put you on spotlight. Go for it, my friend.
Hi everyone. I am Siddhant Goyal. I am a lawyer practicing in India. I am in a firm called Sim and San Attorneys at Law. I primarily practice as a commercial litigator in the courts in India, from a wide range of subjects from patent litigation, trademark litigation to commercial litigation. And I also help and spearhead sort of the growth of startups, when just with their IP assets, how to monetize those assets, how to protect those assets, and the entire journey from starting as a seed to reaping the fruit. So I think the entire journey is very it's very eventful and very satisfactory, and eventually to enforce the rights before in the right manner and get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is what I always endeavor to do.
Awesome. Yeah, we love that. We would like the pot of gold at the end of the, I think everybody wants the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So thank you. Muyan from Korea, thank you so much for joining us. Please take a moment to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to your firm, how you got into IP. Let us know.
Hello, hi everybody. My name is Muyan Shin from South Korea. I'm a founder of the Kiel IP firm in the South Korea. It's been almost 9 years now, and we have 8 patent attorneys and about 30 people all together. So I was an engineer at the first time, and then I was fascinated in the IP business, and then I got enrolled into this business, and then I've been doing the intellectual property thing in a fun way. So in my early stage, I've majored in the prosecution in the patent or trademark. Now I do most of my time in trials and litigation these days. So I wrote books about the patent and trademark in South Korea, and our firm mainly focused on the domestic companies. About 80% of our firms in the clients are domestic. Only 20% of overseas are their overseas clients. Some of them are very big com companies and like CATL in the China, but the most of them are small or middle-sized company, and some of them are Korean universities also. So we are doing some fun. Also, I sometimes I defend the Korean client, and sometimes I defend the foreign client. So my position is tricky in a way, but I have my passion in this ground, and I'm very grateful for doing this job. So Korea has been great company for filing the intellectual property over many years. But the protection in the South Korea for the IP business was a little bit weak comparing to United States and other countries. But now Korean government is enforcing the Korean IP protection in these days. They raised the compensation rate from the 3 times to 5 times these days. So that's how it goes now. And also I will um, I will end my thing and feel free to ask anything in the meantime. Thank you.
Okay, great, Muyan. Yes, we will definitely get into more of the benefits or not of filing in Korea. Thank you for the introduction. Last but not least, Khan, who works at a firm in China, but I believe I don't, are you in Japan still? I can't remember, but
Yeah,
maybe.
I'm in Japan now.
Okay, yeah. So please, who are you? How'd you get into IP? And a little bit about you and the firm would be great.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And my name is Kan Zhang, and I'm with Beijing Gaowa IP Law Firm. And I'm calling from Tokyo, not Beijing. And it's a real honor to be invited. And I see that the ladies and gentlemen here are having his or her own small businesses. And my firm here works in the IP practice, like trademark patents and product copyright, whatever it is. We're specialized in offering services to foreign clients. But before joining this firm, I was working as an international trade businessman. So I'm very much familiar with the OEM manufacturer thing and the marketing things here in China as well. So hopefully that my incoming representations and my introductions about China will help you out there, no matter in manufacture or in market. Of course, IP is something which we cannot rule out, which is very important in China. Anyway, I hope I will be of help. Thank you, Werner, for joining us today.
Great, thank you. So let's get into it a little bit. I think I think what people first, I think what we need to discuss is the United States has a really old system of intellectual property laws since 1790. Maybe each of you can talk, and that matters because it affects the way, the definitions of what's patentable, what's trademarkable, what's copyrightable. It changed over 200 years. Let's start with Siddhant. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the IP system in general, history, pros and cons, things like that. I think it's important for people to realize the kind of cultural and legal regulatory landscape when it comes to intellectual property as well as its history. So maybe you can start. Hold on, I'm gonna unmute you
Yeah, no,
and we're gonna
I did that for myself.
go
Yeah.
for it.
So I think India as a country, we are about a 75-year-old republic. And I think in the 75 years of our days as a country, having a legal system, we have done tremendously well. The legal system has evolved and adapted to the, needs of the hour, needs of the global world. And since 1991, when we opened our doors to the world, really, our economy opened, we have really, stepped up in terms of IP protection. Today, when we look at India on the IP map, be it trademark filings, patent filings, IP enforcement, we are there and a name to reckon with. I think we are the fastest growing IP filer in the world. And what is most fascinating and most interesting is that you have a robust system for protection, and then you have a robust system for enforcement. And just to give you some insight on when I say about protection and enforcement, historically we were seeing trademarks, for example, being granted in 3 to 5 years, a simple trademark. But now we are seeing trademarks being granted within 6 months to about a year and a half, 18 months. And that includes a 4 month opposition period where third parties can oppose your trademark. So, really the administrative system has exceptionally kept up with the needs of the hour. Then on the patent side, we are seeing now patents being granted in a year to a year and a half as well, which used to historically take about 5 to 8 years. So when I talk about IP protection, trademarks, patents, copyrights, designs, we have really speeded up the administrative process. And I think with the number of lawyers in India and the number of hands which are, doing IP in India, protecting IP in India has increased. It is one of the best times to protect your IP in India because there is great value to it. So when I talk about protection, I talk about commercialization, I talk about monetization. And there are obviously always two parts to monetization of IP. One is to get investment. And because India is such a mass market, we are a consumer market, we are a 1.4 billion population. So we are always a very attractive country if you have IP. So once you've solved the puzzle of getting the IP, the puzzle of monetizing it is actually easier. It's the easier of the two. So having solved the protection part, the monetization part in India is rather easy, and there's a lot of money people are investing into the country. We have the highest number of unicorns in the world coming in the past 5 years. So there is definitely something we are doing right. And I think that is very important. And the second part to monetization and commercialization is our enforcement system. And just to take 2 minutes on the enforcement system, in the past 1 year, our firm, and I have been grateful to have been part of both those, landmark cases. We got a judgment in a patent litigation where the courts in India granted $26 million as lost profits for infringement of our client's trademark patent. And that is historic. And just to give you perspective on that number, Indian courts had not granted even $1 million aggregate over 75 years of our existence. So these steps in the right direction show that Indian system is now willing to honor the value of IP. On the similar lines, in just a couple of weeks back, we got a $39 million damage claim against Amazon in a trademark infringement suit in India. So again, coming back to the point I was making, there is value in India which is being recognized, which is being appreciated, and which is being enforced. So when your protection is sorted, your monetization is sorted, your enforcement is sorted, I think you have a 360 in terms of IP, IP systems. And it's just the we just hope that you are able to ride the wave and reap the benefits of our ever growing economy, and how IP is playing a very vital role in the overall growth of the economy.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important for people to hear that because for all of you that are about to for Muyan and Khan that are about to answer, I think this is something I think people want to hear because they're always asking, like, will my rights be respected? Will my intellectual property be respected? We'll get into the business side in a second, but thank you, Siddhant. That was really illuminating, and thank you for that. Muyan, what about Korea? Where are we with Korea?
Okay. In the South Korea, because South Korea has been the best developer in the IP business there, so it's one of the five top countries for filing in the whole world. Now I would say one case that I've experienced. I was in the IP suit against the American company. The company's name was Acushnet. Their brand was the Titleist, the gold ball. So they filed a lawsuit the in the United States to against the client, the big company. At that time, the in the United States, there was no way our client could evade the patents. They had like three patents in the dimple. in the Gulf War. So they gave up the US the market, and then they still sell their Gulf War in the Korea market. The reason is the Akusnet didn't file a patent in the South Korea. So the same Gulf War had been banned in the United States, and it's still working in the South Korea. So if you skip the South Korea, that means you will abandon the market. So same Gulf War, same the technology can be used in the South Korea. So that's one thing. Korea is a big market, and now the Akusnet is filing the many patents in the South Korea, but they didn't. They abandoned the Korean market in like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But usually patent goes 20 years, 20 years. So if you miss one country in the first place, then you will lose the entire market. That can happen. So and the Korean IP has been developing, but I would say the Korea's good thing in the IP is good registration. I mean the in our office, our the trademark registration rate is about 95%, and the patent registration rate is about 90%. So it's quite high. So we can expect registration if we do good enough the argument or the but in the other country we have different like if we file the China trademark, the success rate is very low comparing to the South Korea. So in South Korea, you can expect if you search enough before filing, then you can expect the result. So I would say the stability in the South Korea is good, and we support the fast track examination. So if you need in a hurry in IP in the South Korea, you can make a fast examination program like a PPH program. So you can make a patent registered even within 6 months or 12 months in a fast time. Also, there are fast examination program in the trademark. And also the design patent, we can register design patent within 3 months in fast. So I would say that that's a good thing in the South Korea. And also, the enforcement is in South Korea is in developing. I mean, we could Korea cannot uh, make a very high damage like US or other China. The compensation rate is still low because Korea is a kind of small market compared to United States or China. But the thing is, we can the Korean the IP can make the product cannot be sold. Well, even Korean IP can send the executive to the jail. So Korean enforcement system can make people go to the jail. So that's one of the um, big advantage in the South Korea. So and then also there are in the shopping mall and like the coupon in the South Korea, they are like somebody claim their IP, then other party cannot sell their product. So it would be banned until they prove they have their own IP or their invalidation of the other parties the IP right. So having a IP in the South Korea is very important for doing business in the South Korea. So that's it for now.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, sharing those insights. Yeah, I agree. Korea has definitely, I think out of the three countries, Korea is definitely probably the most progressive of all of them because they've been doing it longer than India and China. So thank you for that. Let's go to China. Probably the newest patent system, the newest intellectual property system, I think since the 80s. But that doesn't mean anything these days. So please, Khan, maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we are maybe the youngest
The
system
youngest.
IP, the youngest. The Chinese trademark law and the patent law was established, I think, quite back to 1987 or something like that. And in the US, you have the patent law or the IP practice back in 200 years ago, right? So at that moment, China was being invaded, right? So we have nothing about IP. Then for the recent 50 years, we've established this IP system. So China is quite new. And for years after China joined the WTO, I think China has been accused by countries abroad that it's a big country of copying, of like counterfeiting. And I think everybody knows that. But with the quite development of Chinese IP, now we are seeing that we're the biggest market for IP now. For example, you have the World Factory here in China, and you have people here. That is, you might know that for trademark is a brand that can distinguish the origin of the company, and we have the same thing here in China. For patents, is something protect your ideas. The same thing we have in China. For design, you can protect your products and the packages, designs. Pretty much the same thing because we learned that from the Germany patent system. And compared with the U.S., still it is a country where the prosecution and litigation is still that developed. But now with the development of the judicial environment here in China, at least your IPs will be respected by the government. I'm not saying by anybody else. Still, someone's going to copy your technology and copy your trademark and copy everything. We call that squat in this industry, that your brand has been squatted, your technology has been squatted. It happens a lot. And my firm helped a lot of the companies to get their IP rights back to them in China. So at least when you file something, get register something, the Chinese IP court and some enforcement, the bureaucraticals will help you to enforce them. So China is a place where we believe you don't want to ignore or neglect because somehow your business is going to be involved in manufacturing or merchandising here in China. So there's not too much difference between the IP system of China, Japan, South Korea, India, whatever it is. But don't, you know, neglect China or don't ignore China as a big place for IP fighting and your securing of an IP right. I think that's what I'm going to say, and thank you.
Well, Khan, actually, I'm going to stick on you for a little bit, if we can. Um, so, can you talk a little bit about what it means for some of the folks that are listening or on the call that are not based in China to actually file their intellectual property in China, but then try to do business there as well, right? That I think that's like a whole other kind of topic, but I think we need to get into it. How easy is it for a foreign person to do business? As an example, I recently found out that you can't purchase a domain name in China unless you're a Chinese
Really?
national. And for the .cn, and it's great to have the .cn if you're going to do business in China. So things like that, like, can you talk a little bit about how easy or hard it is for a foreign company that maybe has their intellectual property? Okay, I did it. I filed my patent. I filed my trademark. How do I need to do business in that country now, and how hard is that? Do I work with someone like you? Do I need an agent? Like, should I be traveling there? Things like that, Yeah,
Okay. First of all, you don't have to travel to China to file a trademark or a patent here.
good. That's good to
If
know.
something is difficult, you don't have to do that. But we strongly suggest you to go to your local law firm or IP law firm like Mr. David, and they know how this works worldwide. It's a globalized market for IP industry. Globalized. And for foreigners, everybody have the same rights to file and obtain something in IP of China, trademark, patents, whatever it is, because this is a universal agreement for different countries. Of course, China is part of that. So I don't think there's much difference between a domestic Chinese entity or individual to file something and obtain something in China than a foreign entity or foreign individual. As long as you go to a local firm and then come to us for a Chinese law firm, we will get things done. And that's what we do here.
That's good to hold on. Thank you for that. I think that's good to know. I think it's important that everybody tries to work with a local firm first before they kind of branch out into a specific country. That's good advice. Thank you for that. Muyan, what about you? What about in Korea? Doing business in Korea, how hard is that for folks to do?
Okay, um, I don't think that doing business in South Korea is difficult, but I would say it's medium rather. So because some of South Korea speak very well good English, and some of them don't speak good English. So, but in these days, young people usually say English, so the language problem might be not difficult. I see a lot of business owners or startups in the South Korea these days, which is foreign friends, and doing the selling company in the South Korea is very simple, and it can be done and in the local form. So like concept, you don't have to come to South Korea for doing that kind of thing. So you're doing contacting to your local agent, then the attorney, then they can connect us to make those kind of company set up or other thing. And actually, there are the foreign entrepreneur can benefit from the simplified incorporation procedure, tax incentive, and there are a lot of R&D support programs. So setting up in the South Korea business is not difficult, and there are a lot of highly skilled workforce in the South Korea. So you can hire some good talented people and advanced manufacturing infrastructure, so you can make or build anything in the South Korea, and there are robust IP protection, and I would say the Korean the law Korean court equally treat the foreigner or the local people. So because I do depend both sides. So I I I believe they totally depend both in the court. So the Georgia very moderate. So I would say that those are benefit of the South Korean doing business.
Muyan, question. I want to make sure I want to make sure I understood something. So, do you recommend that companies that want to do business in Korea that they actually incorporate themselves first, for like I might have a U.S. company, or I might have a European company, but if I want to do business in Korea, I should be incorporating myself there as well.
Um, in, um, Incorporating yourself. I mean, because my English is not good enough, so
I'm
I
talking
might.
about like Muyan, sorry to interrupt. I'm talking about like starting a corporation in Korea specifically to do business in Korea. That's something I should be doing.
Um, you mean should you make a corporation for doing business in the South Korea? Then you mean
Correct.
for starting
Correct.
business? There are two ways for doing business in the South Korea. One is for doing like the making a corporation, like the legal entity, and one is for some I don't know how to say them, the personal business license. So you can do both. So you can acquire personal business license, or you can make a corporation. You can do both.
Okay. Sedan, so thank you, Miran. Same question, Sedan. Doing business in India, hard challenges. Please let me know.
So I think India doing business has become much easier. Incorporation process of companies has become a breeze. You can get a company incorporated within a month, within 15 to 30 days. You can get all the paperwork done, have a company name applied, have it registered, and you can start doing business. There are very little restrictions in terms of who can be shareholders in the company, right? The paperwork is very streamlined. There is not much of legalization, apostle, etc., which is required. And very importantly, digital signatures make document execution much easier, right? We accept e-signatures, we accept digital signatures, and that makes the process much simpler. And once the company is incorporated, then the taxation system also has become very streamlined and cohesive. So, all multiple taxes have now come under one bucket of, a GST, a goods and services tax, which has really streamlined, the ease of business in India. And again, tying it up with back with the, when I talk about IP, that it is very easy for any person to apply for IP. There is no restriction on who can apply IP, who can own domain names, right? It's crystal clear. And being a signatory to the TRIPS agreement, right? There are a lot of benefits which come across the board. So, from starting the company to owning IP and to growing your business based on IP, I think it's one of the most fascinating, again, I would say, countries where there is immense growth, and the results are for everyone to see. We have now the Apples of the world, we have Samsungs of the world who are doing their production in India. They're moving out of their historical factories which were primarily based in China, and they had initially for a long time moved to Vietnam as a sort of a stopgap arrangement, but a lot of them are now coming to India, right? We have very good manpower, skilled manpower, which is relatively cheap as compared to other countries. We have a very young population, as our which is available in the data to for all to see. So I think all the boxes are checked in terms of the ease of doing business, and there are several models available which can be explored to do business as well, right? There are various, so for example, we see so many subsidiaries of foreign companies coming into India doing business. And because also India, something which I should mention, has a lot of tax treaties with many countries, right? Double taxation avoidance agreements with many countries. So that overall eases the planning, corporate structuring, tax planning, etc., which overall gives you a very good, a feel good factor of entering the country and doing business.
Amazing. I'm gonna stick on you a little bit because it's kind of a related topic. There are people on the call, and the people that will be watching the recording. Everybody's raising money. Everybody needs money, right? At the end of the day, can you talk a little bit about whether there's opportunity for, and there may not be, but I'm just curious. It's hard in the United States to do what I'm about to say, but is there an opportunity for foreign companies, like a US based company, let's say, to get investment by doing business, or from Indian investors or Korean investors or Chinese investors, without necessarily having a business set up there, or maybe they have to have, just maybe you can kind of work that out for us. Because again, in the States, if you are seeking US investors, they're likely going to require that you have a US entity and that your intellectual property is owned by that entity, and a few other kind of requirements. Is it the same in India for a foreign company?
Well, if your question is about Indians investing into a US company, is that what you were asking me,
Correct.
David?
As an example, yeah, it could be a UK company, just a foreign company that's not Indian based. So, I'm coming to India, I'm filing my intellectual property there. I want to do business there. How's the investment situation there?
So I think it is one of the best. India is one of the most fertile, grounds for raising investments. In fact, we have seen so many companies, David, which had initially set up their parent companies, say in Singapore, right? They raised tons of money in Singapore, right? But when it came to doing an IPO, going to the market, going public, they have now shifted their bases back to India, right? Because they see that the eventual market value that you get in India, what we call the PE ratio, the price to earnings ratio, in India is phenomenal. I mean, it would surpass some of the most developed countries in the world. So, the number of IPOs we've had and the number of successful IPOs we've had in the past few years, especially after COVID, is just mind-boggling. So, in terms of raising investments in companies in India, is just it's just next level. So we are just right now doing one venture, David, where a US brand, right, is shifting its entire trademark portfolio to a company in India, right? It's shifting its business turnover to India so that it can eventually do an IPO in India. So it's almost like a reverse of what we saw in the past, where Indian companies were going abroad to raise money, going to Nasdaq and raising money. They're now back to India. So we're having foreign brands coming to India, shifting their entire trademark asset portfolio to India, getting all their turnover booked in India, paying taxes in India, but in the process being eligible to the phenomenal IPO system that we have in India and the phenomenal returns that you get in going public in India.
I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised. So thank you for sharing that. Muyan, same question to you. Maybe you can shed some light. Is it like how easy or hard is it for a foreign company, a non-Korean based company, to get to again, assuming they can do business there and they have their intellectual property in Korea, how hard is it for them to get investment in Korea
From the investment
from
from
investors?
company or government?
Both, both.
Mm, mm. There are a lot of startups in the South Korea these days. The government is investing a lot of money, and the Korean companies investing a lot of money. There are a lot of startups and the VCs in the South Korea now. So I think it's not difficult to get an investment if they have a good technology or whatever, because um, there is no general ownership cap, or in the most industry, foreigners can own 100% of the Korean companies. So, and then there are not much restriction, and there are a lot of good investors in the South Korea. The VCs are a lot of. I also work as an accelerator in the South Korea the market. So as I see, it's possible, but as a government investment, that's I cannot tell. I haven't seen one, but regarding the companies investment, like big companies are investing their money to startups these days. So whether it's VC or the big companies, it's capable.
Okay, great. Well, I actually I want to ask you a little bit about the accelerator. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, accelerator. In the South Korea, they can set up the accelerator when they have the minimum requirement. So there are about 400 something accelerator in the Korean market these days. and I believe about hundreds of the VCs in the South Korea these days. So accelerator is a uh, small. There are very minimum regulation for the doing the accelerator business. So these days it's flourishing. There are a lot of accelerators. So it's not difficult to get a small amount money for the investing money. Also, there are some the government funded program in the South Korea. So we call it TIPS. So it's like the accelerator or VC if they're private investors. So if the private investor invests their money, then the government also invests their money. So they make a lot of investment so they can make a company bigger and bigger. So there are the tips are very famous program in the South Korea. Most famous one is successful in these days. So that's how they do in business in the South Korea. But the thing is, um, frankly speaking, in the United States or the China, it's a really big market. So if they have succeeded, they grow really big. But in the South Korea, even though they succeeded, they cannot go that big. So maybe one of third time or one of fifth times as big as the United States or China. But I think the business environment is good enough. So doing startups in the South Korea is not bad. So when they succeed, but they try to invest to get an investment from the other the country's investment VCs, and then they try to build their companies in another countries to get investments from the other countries. So that's how the startups do in these days. So yeah, those
Yeah.
are the startup market in these days.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's good to know that Korea is a good, you know, a test market, if you will. I mean, it's more than a test market, clearly, but like it's good to know that you can validate, in Korea and then jump off into a larger market for sure. That's
Yeah,
important.
right. There are some success story like the parrot in they use the product in the South Korea. They succeeded in the South Korea and then they moved to the Canada market and they succeeded. Uh, and then there are a lot of similar stories these days.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's good to know. Thank you for that. Khan, China. Um, What could you tell us about doing business in China as well as getting foreign investment in China, right? So I'm just using the US as an example. I'm a US based company. I got my Chinese patent and trademark. I got, I've set up, hope maybe I set up a Chinese entity or whatever. Will a Chinese VC or a Chinese based accelerator or Chinese government, will they or won't they invest in me?
Hmm. Oh, that's a quite difficult question. And
Yeah, yeah,
from
I
my
know, but I think it's
perspective,
important for people to know, you know?
well, I think most of the audience today is quite more of a small business or whatever it is. And
Yes.
from the bottom of my heart, I don't recommend that you want to absorb some Chinese capital in your business. I'm sorry to say that, but I suggest that the bosses and the entrepreneurs here consider China as a part of your supply chain as a manufacturer base, or if you want to merchandise in China, just to sell your products. And if you have some particular technologies and protective in China, you want someone to investigate you. It's a quite difficult business to do because, you know, if you are involved with the Chinese the capitals, they might want to eat you up and try to make money by your technology. So I don't recommend that you raise fund or get some investment from the China part, but consider China as an important market or a manufacturer base, the supply chain is what I'm suggesting. And if you set up a subsidiary in China, which is not necessary nowadays to do your business because you can find the high quality or a trustworthy Chinese partner to help you out with the merchandising thing or the manufacturing thing. And in this way, you can remain as a foreign entity and a foreign client, but starting your business in China as well. But make sure that you go through everything through the help of a Chinese law firm or something, which is better. Oh, somebody said that I'm caught.
Yes, and you cut out just a little bit there. I think you were from what we understood, and I appreciate the transparency. It's probably best that 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 you're not necessarily looking for Chinese investors, but instead just think of China as as the market where you could have your supply chain.
Exactly.
You also mentioned finding the right partners in China.
Yeah.
For all of the folks that are not based in China, that's a little bit of a puzzle. What's the best way to do that? Is it working through a firm like yours? Is it, flying to China and meeting people? Like, if you can maybe shed some light on like the best practices, it's a big thing, as you can imagine. Many people work in China. They don't know who to trust. What do I do? I've never met them. I don't know them. What from your perspective, what are some of the best practices of working with Chinese partners? Manufacturers, suppliers. Like, what's the best way to go about that?
That's a very nice question. And, I used to be a trade businessman, and I know this very vivid thing in this, the psychology in this thing. The first of all, every client, you can have the access to the website like Alibaba or like the World Factory things. You can find almost 4 to 5 suppliers at the same time if you type in the keyword of the products you want to manufacture. Then I suggest you to come to visit China and review them one by one, at least to see if the people are cooperating and if they're trustworthy, judging by yourself. And then find a Chinese law firm to secure, to safeguard all the works between you and the Chinese company. And then there will be very much a safe approach to start a business like you mentioned, finding a partner in China. Meeting people, meeting in person is very important as well. And also, have someone to safeguard everything is also very important. You don't want to come to China with naked. I mean that with no one is guarding you, and somehow to make sure that the Chinese company, the partners, the potential partners, are performing like a real business company. And I'm sure you will find them by the barriers of the internet access or something. Yeah, but come to visit and let us, the agency or the law firms, to safeguard this fleet, and then you can start your business in China.
Khan, can you do the opposite? Can you hire the law firm to take the meetings that like I can't get to China. I'm not flying to China. I can't get to
Mm.
China. Can I hire the law firm to, you know, do the due diligence on those companies? Do you work in that manner as well?
Oh, that is something that the foreign the foreign business capable law firm can do in China, due diligence, and help you to secure and give a review about the partners that you find out, and then give it a report about who is looks like the most trustworthy partners. And maybe the U.S. clients need a Chinese law firm's endorsement, and that's something we routinely work. It's never a problem.
Okay, great. I love that. Thank you, Khan. Thank you for sharing that. That's really
Thank you.
important. People are very curious about that question. Same question, Muyan. Like, do I need to to kind of go to Korea and actually meet my manufacturers and suppliers, or can I work through you?
Um, I think you can work through me or also other firm because Korean company is kind of reliable. They don't um, there are not many the companies who do bad things in the South Korea. I think it's safe. You don't have to come, but something if you have some special quality control or something, you might come to the South Korea. But if you need some general assistance from the South Korean companies or service, you don't have to come here. You can ask your business partners or like law firm or other companies that then they will handle good quality. So I think the Korean company is reliable. So easy things you don't have to come.
Amazing. I appreciate that transparency as well because, there are like myths out there as to, certain countries and stuff like that. And so I'm glad that the three of you are here to kind of break some of those myths. Sident, what about India? Should I be like, you know, can you talk about some of the myths and realities of kind of of being a foreign company and doing business there and should I be there myself? Can I work through your law firm? Stuff like that.
So, David, I think one of the biggest myths about India is, well, it used to be the reality in the past, but it's no longer the reality, which is that there is too much of government control, right? The government is owning everything or is trying to regulate everything. So I think from being totally watching over you, right? They have a general overview of what you're doing, right? And I think that flexibility and freedom and more than elbow room that is required to do business, right? In a manner that you can plan what you're doing rather than being seen as avoiding the system, right? Planning around the system versus trying to avoid the system. That is, I think, the most satisfying feature we have seen in the past few years. And really that is something which has come about with new government policies which have been we've been seeing. There's a lot of startup appreciation, a lot of startup contribution, and many benefits being given to startups. So for example, when I again talk about IP, there is a reduction in the official fees payable by a startup as compared to a normal company. So if you are registered as a startup company in India, you get several benefits. And thereafter, if you are able to take the benefit of certain incubation programs, right? There are several incubation programs around the country which are sponsored by states. So it's not just a central pool of funds which are being utilized for this. So India is comprised of about 28 to 31 states, right? And each of those states have their own startup funds, right? They have their own startup initiatives because they want to attract investment in their states so that the startups can have their offices, their premises, their factories in their states, because that's how the federal structure of the country works. So there are so many initiatives being given to startups, and I think that is one of the biggest myths about the country as to how easy it is to start work and how easy it has become to raise money in India. You know, despite the funding winter we've been seeing for the past about 2 years now, 2 to 3 years, India hasn't really slowed down. We've had still many unicorns coming from India, right? We've had so many successful IPOs in India. And even today, I feel that in the next 2 years, we'll see more unicorns than we have seen in the past 5 years. We will see more IPOs that we have seen in the past 5 years. And the last 5 years have been the golden period of India. So I am visualizing and I am foreseeing the next 2 years to be one of the best eras that we will see in the Indian economy. And I think the myth about India being not so easy has really been busted. And because of the young economy we are, because of the young population we have, And because of the mass of our population, I think the future is in India.
I love that. Thank you. I love that you're all advocates for your countries. I think that's great. That's the way it should be. Just it's pretty late. Where all of our speakers are. Does anybody have any questions for them? Before we give them their final words. If you have any questions, I know there was a few in the chat, and thank you for looking at the chat, speakers, and thank you for sharing some information there. I really, really appreciate it. But anybody have any questions for our speakers? If you do, just put up your hand, and we can we will call, just raise your hand on Zoom, and we can go from there. In the meantime, maybe our speakers can just talk a little bit about um, just kind of some, like, again, final thoughts, if you will, in case there are no questions. Oh, here, there's a question here before so to our speakers, just gather your thoughts for final thoughts and stuff like that. Maybe things that you wanted to say, but I didn't ask or didn't get to or anything like that. But Clayton Davis is asking, is the situation in Vietnam different? I mean, I'll just say on behalf of everyone, and you're all welcome to kind of chime in if you would like. Every country is different. So every country has intellectual property laws. Every country has its own system, its own regulatory framework. And so likely the situation is different in Vietnam. It could be more like the United States, or more like China, or more like India, or more like Korea. But yeah, so we don't have anyone from Vietnam, but does anybody have any thoughts or comments on Vietnam? Nguyen, Sedan, Khan?
I'm sort of familiar with the Vietnam I mean the IP laws. I pretty much they learned that from the USA or French or whatever it is. But the same like China or Korea or India, you have to file something protect. But the problem is the enforcement. But at least you have to something registered in that country, and try using a local law firm, of course, via the help of the domestic U.S. law firm like David. Then you will be secured by a system that both professionals form a combination to offer helps in the Vietnam, because the local firms are the ones that knows the very practice, and you have to rely on them. That's what I can suggest to you.
Yeah, no, Khan, that's an excellent point. You really have to judge a country's intellectual property law and kind of business systems by how well they treat a kind of infringement and investment. And so the more mature, what I'm trying to say is that the more mature the country is, as you've heard today from our speakers, the more attractive it is to file your intellectual property there and do business there and get investment there. That's kind of what this is all about. So Vietnam may be a great place to manufacture, and I'm just speaking rhetorically and not providing an opinion, but like Vietnam may be a cheap place to kind of manufacture and source, but if God forbid there was some intellectual property infringement that you had to deal with in Vietnam as a result of doing your manufacturing and sourcing there, that's where things start to fall apart, as Khan was trying to discuss. Siddhant, any comments? Muyan, any comments on that? Okay. If no comments on Vietnam, Vietnam can be a totally another presentation. But Muyan, final thoughts for everybody. Maybe you can talk about some best practices or kind of mistakes you've seen over the years that that companies have made in Korea in terms of IP. Really, it's completely up to you. Your final thoughts.
Ah, I forgot to mention one thing good thing in South Korea. The enforcement, the lawsuit cost is relatively cheap comparing to United States, very
Oh, I'm
cheap.
sure.
So that's a good thing in the South Korea. And yeah, other than that, everything is normal. So I mean, it's, South Korea is a good country for protecting IP. But if you don't have one, one like in IP business, your business cannot be protected in South Korea. So I recommend it to register something in the South Korea. That's that's my final advocate for the South Korea.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Khan, if you put on your camera, I can spotlight you and maybe you can give us your final thoughts on China, maybe things that we didn't mention, that maybe we could have gotten to, things that people need to know.
Okay, thank you very much for this chance of the last advice to you. Speaking of China, still, I think almost everything is manufactured in China. Even a small chip, even a small part of your product, maybe manufactured or assembled by some Chinese company located in Guangdong province or Shenzhen or whatever it is. They are good in the manufacturing. They have the expertise and the experience of doing this thing, like OEM manufacturer or something else. So, but I think this is something every law firm or every IP lawyer would like to say is that before you start doing something, as long as you have the idea, file something, register some IP rights. This is for your sake, but not for the law firm's sake. The last thing we want to see is that your things being copied in China. I'm Chinese, but I have to say that Chinese people love to copy, and some of the companies are making a living by copying things. So it's like they come after you. It's not like I'm not manufacturing in China. I'm not merchandising in China. I only work as a system or a software in China. They come after you. So this is the international IP protection system. Try making sure that no one come after you, and then do work closely with someone knows the IP industry. I'm sure that your business is gonna be supported by the China manufacturer or the market, whatever it is. So making sure that China is part of our business, and the combination of law firms is always standing by. That's the last thing I would like to say. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Khan. Again, thank you for that transparency. I really appreciate those comments.
I have to be frankly with everybody.
That's great. I think that's it's definitely the way that we all want and kind of desire and appreciate. So thank you for that. Sedan, what about you? Final thoughts?
Um, am I audible?
You're audible, but your picture froze.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. There's some issue with my system.
No worries. But we can hear you.
Actually, it what it I think what it boils down to is that, if you represent 25% of the world population, and which really is one of the youngest populations in the world, then you're looking at a market that you need to be there, right? And if you need to be there, you need to have your IP protected there, because eventually your IP is going to be the bedrock of what you do in the future and how you build your value in the future. So getting IP protected is naturally the first step you need to take in order to ensure that you are able to explore and exploit this market.
Amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that. Listen, I want to just say to our speakers, thank you. I know it's super late by you. I really appreciate the time and your commitment to this. And we will be sending the recording and we will send some insights that we learned over the call. And look out for our next entrepreneurial strategy series meeting, which is going to be usually the last Thursday of the month. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. And thanks for joining. Take care, everybody. Bye. Bye-bye.